Shabbat Shalom, everyone. The Rabbi covered so many different things, but I tried to look for a thread, to be able to follow. And he talked about, one of the things that I learned during my short years in Christianity was that you always had to tell people about Jesus. It's like conversion was the most important thing. And when he spoke here about Abram, he left Haran with the nefesh asher asu, the souls who he made, and it's not that he converted anyone to another religion. He really he heard from God, and he told everybody about it. And those who believed him, who also, I don't know if they heard, they also had some experience. They knew somehow that it resounded within their soul that this was true. So they left with him. And so it's not about conversion, but it's about God introducing himself. I love the idea of the calling, because we do all have a calling, and hopefully we can find our calling. And because when we fulfill it, there's no greater joy, but there's also no greater struggle, because like he said, when we leave our family, our friends, or those from the past, when we leave those ideas, there are always those detractors, those who tell us, what do you mean? All the things that all these sages and everything that they knew were wrong and you're right. Like, what makes you think you're right? But there's something deep within the soul that resounds when we read the Torah and we know that this is the right way. And it's not a matter of talking to people about God, but about walking with him in our imperfected states, because there's not one of us who are perfect. In our imperfections, we walk with him, and we learn to reflect the character of God, and that takes a long time. I remember when I heard, oh, now you're a new creation. All the old things have passed away. Now you're new. Well, let me tell you, I'm not so new. There's a lot of things in me that still I need to work with. And that's the deepest struggles that we have, is the struggle within ourselves. We can blame others. I struggle with those people, but honestly, we're struggling more with our own natures, with ourselves. So, and the bottom line is, he says, are we faithful to our calling? And that is the greatest thing that we could do. The greatest gift that we could give ourselves is to be faithful to our calling, because then those around us will see. And the world right now needs people who are true to the God of Israel, true to the calling that we've been given. It's really the only hope that we have, because the things are a big mess. So for those of you who heard the message of our rabbi, you don't have to put your cameras on if you're afraid to be seen, but was there one thing that he said that spoke to you, that you heard, that you learned from today?
Okay, I was hearing the message, and honestly, the point is that God is the one who called us. We are not the ones who comes before God. And I love the way that he explained the midrashim that explain that Abraham at the year of 3 years, or he met the creator, because the Bible keeps quiet about his very first 75 years of
Right,
life.
right.
Uh, so we don't know exactly what happened. Okay, we have stories, but that doesn't mean that it's really what happened.
Right.
And sometimes this is something that he was relating because he was saying that probably some people switch the truth, okay, about the creator. And in these stories are like this. I'm not against them. It's just that I must have to be clear that the Midrashim are not really the Torah. Okay. By the other way, also I love the way he explained how it's important that all the persons that are in the Bible are that are supposedly our heroes are not perfect.
Right.
They are humans. They made mistakes.
Right.
And supposedly Abraham, who was the father of the faith, well, he had problems to believe in the creator, that he was able to protect him.
Right.
Such twice he asked to Sarah, tell you are my sister.
Right.
And then there are another kind of situations that he was very strong. So this is something that I really love because, you know, all the humans have fear of something. And not always we will be able or capable to have that faith in the creator in our lives. Sometimes we will get very strong and we can say, oh God, I trust in you fully, and you know you are my everything. And everybody says, oh, what man of faith.
Right.
And the next day probably is not a huge problem, is, I don't know, a very little problem, and we don't have trust in God that
Right.
He's capable to do something for us.
Right.
And so the human is like a wave, okay? Sometimes we are up, sometimes we are down.
Right.
The point is, uh, if we hear the voice, in this idea, we were talking on Tuesday about Lech Lecha, that is something that comes from the inner part of us. Okay. In this so following the idea, what happened to Abraham, he heard a voice inside of him. So something ignites his neshama. And the man for 75 years lived by his own. Then suddenly he heard the voice of God.
Right.
And that completely changed his mind, his behavior. We start to see how was the man that had a potential. And you know, it's something that I really loved also, because sometimes people say, "Oh, I'm too old, okay, to do things or to create things." Wow, Noah at the he was 500 years old when he started to do something. Abraham 75, so Moshe 80 years. Okay, so you are not too old. Okay, you are not too young, because it's not about age. We saw David, he was a kid. Okay, his son also, Shlomo, was a kid also. So it's not about age. It's about the time God uh, gives you the opportunity to hear his voice. Okay, and then something happened to you and you are not the same. Okay, no matter your age, no matter your occupation, no matter what you do,
Right.
there is his voice.
Right.
And now it is more needed than you know, when you sent me the what happened with this pogrom in Netherlands, it came to my mind, wow, what a world we are living right now. And supposedly in 2024, it shouldn't be happening today, but it's happening.
Right.
And it's getting worse
Right.
for the world.
Right.
And today I was reading that, for example, Spain will not, because it's a left-handed government, will not allow to that a container vessel that goes to Israel berth on Spain. So you are looking at that and say how it could be possible, okay, the hate to Israel. So, but more than any time, we need to be confident about God, because this is what the Rabbi said. Okay, show me your faith, show me how you trust in God.
Right.
Okay, so we don't have to be afraid. We need to be very comfort about that He's protecting us. Yes, we need to take care of our families, and probably, for example, not going alone to some places fully of Israel.
Right. Right.
Okay, dressed. Okay,
Right.
but this is not about hiding your faith or something like that. No, this is
No.
about to understand that we need to take care also,
Well,
but
that
we need to
reminds
be
that remind
confident.
yes, that reminds me of what Abram did. He knew where he was going. He knew when he goes into Egypt that it was their custom to take a beautiful woman and kill the husband. So he was being wise. He wasn't going and saying, also, oh, I trust in God and I'm going to do anything I want, because those people didn't trust in God. So we have to use wisdom. We can't go flaunting everything. You're right.
So
Also,
this time when it's dark, I believe honestly that it is when we are closer. Abraham lived in a place, okay, with very bad neighbors,
exactly.
okay,
Right.
4 kings or 5 kings, he with the help of God he destroyed.
Yeah.
But honestly, he was not a happy life, okay. He was
No.
surrendered by enemies, okay, all
Right.
the time.
Yeah.
But he kept his faith. He never said, oh God, why you choose me? No. And this is the very same spirit we need to have today.
Yeah. Just hold on one second. Richard, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I was thinking about what the rabbi said about traffic rules in certain countries, and he said that there's some places that the lines on the street are just there for decoration. Remember that?
Right.
Yeah, well, I decided to drive over to an intersection which has six um six streets that come into it. Okay, I'll take a pic. Okay, I'll show it to you right now. Okay, see that? Okay, there's actually three streets that intersect,
Okay.
and there's all stop signs. Okay, and the police department reports that there's never a traffic accident because everyone seems to have an inbuilt courtesy. You know, so I was just thinking about that, about where we get our inbuilt rules. So I will now mute myself.
I don't know if that's a question or it's just a statement, because I guess it depends again on where you're raised.
Okay, it's
When
an inquiry. It's an inquiry. Okay,
yeah,
here's
because
my question.
you know, when you go to India, like he was saying, he went to India, there are no lights or stop signs. And or Philippines, I think in some places I have things like that. And, you know, when I see a lot of immigrants coming here to our country, to this city, I have never seen more people going through red lights. It's just like the lights don't even exist anymore. And so we have to be really careful. People, I don't think it's inborn in us. We have to teach children when they're small the right way and the wrong way. And that's what the Torah does with life. It teaches us the right way and the wrong way of living. Those are just examples, you know, of different cultures. And we have to learn the culture of the land you're living in. But with Abram, he knew the laws of that land, and they would have killed him for sure. One of the things that I just read this morning, and I had to look into it a little more, is that the Israelis who were in the soccer match, they went to support as the Maccabees. I think they went to support their team at a soccer game in Amsterdam, and they were pulling down, I think, some flags of the pro-Palestinians. They were shouting out, "Down with the Arabs." I don't know if this is true, but doing that in a foreign country,
Yeah, I heard that too.
where it's like every one of the characters of the scriptures of our Bible, Abram, Moshe, they've learned to be humble. Humility is one of the traits that God wants to teach us. Not to go and, you know, I'm proud and I'm gonna win and I'm strong and God is with me. That's not what God is asking us to be. When he says do not fear, he's telling us you can rely on me, you can trust in me, but don't think you can do it on your own, because we cannot. And there's an arrogance that we have to be very careful about as a people, especially in a foreign land. And so it's like, it's a horrible thing to watch when we see these things, God coming, our enemies coming against us. But we also have to examine our hearts, and we have to examine our relationship with our Creator. That's a big lesson for us from this story and all the stories in the Torah. Miriam, you were going to say something?
Well, you're pretty much, you and Mauricio are saying so much of what, I want to embellish that, but just, the whole thing of when Rabbi was saying, we have many different cultures here, we come from different countries and different ways of doing things, and sometimes it's hard to understand some of the rules here, etc., etc. So imagine when he was Abram, how it was for him. But then again, I was thinking, even if you don't come, if you're born here, we have our own cultures in our own families.
Right.
And I grew up in an atheist home. And for me to have the calling of God and recognize it was a cultural diversion, a cultural difference from my family. But more than that, as I've gone through life, often, you encounter people who think you're narrow and conservative, and like with all the things happening now, especially with not only with Trump getting in, but with the temperature of the land and the world now. So you have to walk, and it is like coming into a different culture, or you have to. It's like a similar experience, so we can take Abraham's experience and see how it is in our own lives and our own walk with God. I forget. I wanted to say something else. I thought I wrote it down. Can't remember.
I remember, maybe it'll come back to you, but I remember when I started to understand about the Shabbat, and as a believer, in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, how important the Shabbat was, important enough to make it one of the 10 commandments. It's the 4th commandment. And it's for us. And I remember that was one of the biggest battles that I had in my own family, because none of them keep Shabbat, and me too, for years. Shabbat was the day I would go and have my hair done. We work all week. Shabbat is the day to go shopping for food, to go to the hairdresser. And then Sunday is the day to spend with family. This was the day of rest was Sunday in this, because we live in a Christian world. So when I decided to become faithful, to take off that day to Shabbat, that's when a lot of the challenges I faced with my family. They would decide to go out for lunch on Shabbat. They were going to choose that day that the family would be together. And if I said, I can't do it, I'm not spending money on Shabbat, I can't do it, it's a day that God said no, they would say, oh, you're putting your congregation before the family. So that's what he talks about. There's these detractors. Why all of a sudden are you so holy? You're so religious. You've become, but it has nothing to do with that. So there are going to be a lot of things that we're faced with when we choose to follow the Torah. When we choose, Abram must have had plenty of that, going through that.
Just a question. Oh, sorry,
Yeah.
did you finish?
I finished, yeah.
Okay. It's just a diversion, but it reminds me of the keeping the Shabbat, and when, God said, in Bereshit, in the beginning, that all, he created everything on the 7th day, he rested, or it's a sign for us that he created everything, and even the animals rested. And I was looking up a little bit about beaver, and what you sent me, Peggy. Has anyone ever heard of a thing like this, where beavers, and not only beavers, other creatures and insects, whatever, other creatures aren't active in the same way on the Shabbat? I thought it was a joke at first, but apparently beavers don't. They're active constantly all the time, building their dams, etc., but they don't work on the Shabbat. Has anyone heard of that
I didn't
before?
send it out to everybody because I wanted to be sure.
No, I want to be sure too.
Yeah,
that it's
but
not.
I received, I'll send it out to you. I received a video of a man who did some studies about the beavers, that he noticed after years of observing them, is that suddenly on Friday evening, whatever they were doing, the building of the dams, all the work that they did all week long, they stopped. And the whole day of Shabbat was quiet. It was like built into the DNA of the animals. And he said, and he noticed even with the bees on Shabbat that they were quiet. And of course, I didn't really take the time to check it out yet, but this was sent to me by a friend, and the man was saying that this is built into the DNA of the animals, that they do take a day of rest. It's built within them. And I thought, isn't that an interesting thing to think about, that God knows we need that day, and we need the day not only to take a day off from working physically, but also resting our soul from the worries of the week. There's so much stress and fear right now that's being mongered all around the world. We need a day where we just say, no, I'm just shutting down and turning it off. And that's a difficult thing for us to do, but we do need it.
And it's only recently that it sort of clicked in my brain, but not only what you're saying, which is so true, but it's a sign of his very existence.
That's
To me, that's the
key.
That's like the key,
That's the key.
that I am here, I'm with you all the time,
Yeah.
and I created created everything.
Yeah. And he wants us to know that he's protecting us, that he really has our back.
Yeah.
And look what, I mean, I would have thought when I looked at Abram and I thought, here is this man who just told his wife to lie about him being her husband. They go into Egypt and he's blessed. The Pharaoh takes her and he's blessed with all kinds of gifts, and from the Pharaoh, the cattle, the donkey, the slaves, and he leaves a wealthy man. And the one who was punished was the Pharaoh, who didn't know that she was really not his wife. And I thought, isn't that interesting? You would think that they were going to be, because sometimes I think, oh, I'm doing such a good thing, God's going to bless me. I don't know that. You know, God blesses who he wants to when he wants to. It's not because it's not like we're buying his favor. It's really a very confusing thing to walk with our God, because it's completely opposite to the ways of the world, the way we think as human beings. And I think till the day I die, I'll never figure it all out. The older I get, the more questions I have. I remember Rabbi would say that. So it's interesting. Does anybody else have anything that they've learned from this message? I know it's always the same people who are speaking. Does anyone have something that they could say? It would be nice to hear from you, even without turning on your cameras. The silent majority. All right. Well, you know, it's wonderful to read this every week. I encourage those of you who are listening online. I encourage you, if you speak Spanish, you can join in on Tuesday night with Mauricio, who goes through the Torah portion. I read it on Wednesday night with Miriam and several of us. And it's always amazing to me how much we learn just by reading what the Word of God says, without being swayed by what others' opinions are about it. And some of the opinions are good. There are many opinions, and there's nothing wrong with reading or listening to the rabbis, to different scholars. There's nothing wrong with that. We need to be open to it, but we need to read it for what it says. And that's also a little difficult for us who are not Hebrew speakers. You know, my Hebrew is improving. I can read it, I can write it. I don't speak it, but I certainly can. When I read what they say, what it says, I can look things up, and that's an important thing to do. Anyway, stay true to your calling. If you haven't found your calling, ask God to show it to you, because believe me, He wants you to know your calling more than we do, more than I do. And the more we step into it, the more blessed we are in absolutely every way. I'm not saying we're not going to struggle, because I think the closer we walk with God, the greater our struggles are with the world. So, but it's worth it. Anyway, I wish you all a Shabbat Shalom, and I look forward to seeing you again, God willing, next week when we look at Va'era. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat shalom.